You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain, pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane, pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the best above all the rest, put me to the test and expect nothing less. You check as I'm chess, what's happening next? Yeah. He got the venom, a tangible weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson, he got a new engine from pain, it's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just bold and obsession, all in his possession. You got their attention, I'll leave an impression and take your redemption. Just kill, no discretion, your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me. So he's been looking for somebody who could save him, instead of searching inside for what they gave him. A strong will, strong mind causes mayhem. We could change the world, change times, rearrange them. Staying on pace, running the race. Life is a chase, I don't want a place, I wanna be first. Work till it hurts, dehydrated thirst till I'm in a hearse. High ambitions and the right mind can take you so far. It's like you lived a few lifetimes. Take off from a break off from the weak minds, they can stay soft. You can change lives, you create thoughts, never waste time. You got one shot, you got one life, better pop off. What do you like? Make a dream job. No 9-5, no mean boss, just my life and free thoughts. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me.
Yo, here we are. We're about to start.
And when you feel like you're nothing, but you wanna be something, yeah, well, all you really need is hope. I just want you to trust me if you wanna be something. Yeah, that's right. Let's go. Yeah, when you're feeling down and you're out, like you got nothing but doubt. You're alone in the crowd, just trying to figure it out. All of this cloud and this money got you feeling left out. Listen up to me now, every word that's out of my mouth. Wake up, it's me. You're gonna follow your dreams, or are you just gonna be another cog in the sea? You feel the hope in this beat, yeah, the hope that you need to proceed and be exactly what you want it to be. I feel right, and I'm
thinking about getting myself a birthday present, but I'm a little broke, so I can't afford what I was
ever gonna try to change me. Till I'm dead, pushing up daisies. I'm alone in the crowd, I won't feel down. I got hope right now, and I know I'll be found. I don't really care just what all of the haters gotta say. I know everything I do is gonna make them fade away. And when you feel like you're nothing, but you wanna be something, it's hope. I just want you to trust me if you wanna be something, yeah, then all you really need is hope. Take a look in the mirror, are you seeing some fear? You hear the voice in your ear, can you start to see clear? Are the bad thoughts near? Or can you be where your feet are when you stand right here and say no? I'm never gonna give up, I'm never gonna slow. The one that doesn't give up, never loses to a foe. The one that could show to myself I could go all the way to the top, can't stop me. I'm a soldier, always closer till it's over. Older, but I'm bolder, moving forward, older, never slower. Good to know ya, don't go make me drop my shoulder. You need to believe you can achieve everything that you dream. Everything that you need is in the air that you breathe. It's in the mind that you feed, it's in the time that you bleed. Every second of life is another blessing to me. And when you feel like you're nothing, but you wanna be something, well, all you really need is hope. I just want you to trust me if you wanna be something. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, it's what you need when you're down. need when you're out, what you need when you're sad, and when you feel left out. You feel an energy drop, and then creeps out, but with a little bit of hope, you can figure it out. Keep your head high, even when you're down inside. Through the pain you fight, and through the painful nights, you keep striving, keep trying, keep driving, rising, keep thriving, surviving. Nothing's in your way but yourself. Don't need nobody's help. You can make it through this hell. Take it one step at a time, one step as you climb. If you fail, you'll be fine. Get back up to the grind, and never lose sight of your mission. Be driven. This life is a prison if you don't have vision. You're in it to win it, so get it, don't miss it. Your chances now, so be something somehow. Don't let yourself down. That's right. Sometimes all we really need is hope.
And yes, in case you're wondering, I do watch VTubers. I do watch Fillion, and I do watch... I know that was Numi, but I don't really watch Numi. I watch Bao Lowell. But yeah, I watch Fillion all the time. I watch Fillion more than I watch the other. There's 3 of them that I watch. Fillion's number 1 right now. I used to watch the girl who doesn't actually do... I say the girl. The woman who doesn't actually do VTube, but like she shows how to do the models. I used to watch that one because that was really interesting. And then there was another one called AI Angel. And there was another girl too who I can't remember. Both of them fell off. But yeah, no, it's interesting stuff. In the news today, Biden got stricter on immigration and then backed down. Hunter Biden's still in trouble. Negotiations in Israel seem to be going up. The Pope said a few interesting things today. And Randall Rouser. Gavin Ortlund made some mistakes. So we're going to talk about that. So this is going to be way more of a serious stream, and it starts off with a clip from V family. Is it V family or VTube family? Whatever. I starts off with the clip from that from Roach Chan, and we're gonna go into something super freaking heavy. Oh well, it doesn't matter. Okay, so PSA. We're going to talk about heavy stuff this whole week, unfortunately. And so Gavin made a video a while back, maybe about 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago. And when it came out, I noted it here on the channel. And I said, I don't want to talk about it because when I watched it, he didn't have anything constructive or anything interesting to say. And I thought that he completely misunderstood the topic and went somewhere that was unnecessarily complicated for the topic at hand. And that's all I said about it. I didn't mention the video. I just mentioned when it came out and why I wasn't doing a review of it. Well, things have happened since then. Other people noticed what I noticed, and they called out Gavin for it. Randall Rouser being one of the gentlemen I'm gonna actually play his stuff about. But the Diablo critics, I'm gonna say the cousin channel to, or the cousin stream to Myth Visions. I think it's Myth Vision who does it. But there's another stream where all the same people get together, but they're being more academic, and they're kind of promoting their stuff. This one's more critiquing apologetics. It's a different show, but same group for the most part. And they were overly harsh and unconstructively harsh toward Gavin. But there are very personal reasons why I usually avoid the topic that was talked about. So, just to put it very shortly, when I was younger, and I was a Twinkie sissy, I got brutally picked on, and as an outlet, I used sex as an outlet. But that comes from a trauma response to things that happened to me when I was even younger. And so I'm very familiar with violence, and I'm very familiar with the type of violence that is going to be talked about here. But there is a big difference between what I went through and what the type of situation that Gavin and the Diablo critics are going to be speaking of. My tormentors, my you want to call them victimizers, my the people who did the worst you can imagine. I all got stronger than them, massively stronger than them, and I got to beat everyone up. And those who I didn't get to beat up, I got to see justice in other ways, including one person who self-deleted. And pretty much anyone who ever did anything wrong to me, by the time I was 17 or 18, I pretty much either got my revenge or got to tell them to stop. And I even got to save other victims from their trauma, sometimes in very direct ways. Specifically, a boy who was getting pumped. Let's just say he was in a bad situation. And I was, I think I was like 16, 17, and he was about to get jumped. And I was able to save him. And I was also able to save a few friends of mine also by teaching them what I had learned. A friend of mine, Joey, and a girlfriend who I dated, used what I taught them to protect themselves when they were in other situations. And the muscles and the testosterone and the experience as a fighter got to change my life in very profound ways. And I didn't have to deal with that again until maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, when someone brought up that situation unintentionally, I think. But they tried to use their power to show dominance. And because of my previous past situation and how I handled that situation, I did not play the victim. And I do forgive this person. I do feel bad for this person, but I did make sure that he was out of my life after he did something inappropriate. And that's something I get to do as a man with, relatively big muscles, with relatively good income, with relatively a lot of privilege. The victims that are going to be talked about in the next few days don't have those privileges, whether these are fictional victims or real victims. Some of the stuff that Gavin is talking about a time period that may not have even happened and people that may not have existed. But Gavin's overly broad generalization and defense of the actions of the victimizers, of the criminals, of the bad people, in the name of protecting religion, is a black eye in the face of a faith that we just got humiliated with D'Souza, nationally, publicly, internationally. We were just humiliated. And this coming up from Gavin Ortlund's ill-timed, ill-advised defense of horrible actions, I think needs to be talked about. If D'Souza hadn't happened this weekend, maybe I'd be able to ignore it. But D'Souza did happen. So we can't have someone like Gavin, who's one of our best spokespersons for Christianity and for the faith, making a mess of a situation like this. So we're going to begin with Randall Rouser because I think he has the best take of everyone involved. Of everyone in this situation, I think Randall Rouser has the best take. And I mentioned this to Kip Davis under one of his... He made a comment under someone else's comment, or he posted someone else's comment. And I made a comment under there asking what they thought about Randall Rouser's response and if they were aware. And Kip said that, Dr. Kip said that Randall Rouser's, he thinks is great on this topic. So I think at least as far as I know, everyone who agrees that Randall Rouser does have a good take. I think he has the best take, so we're going to start there. And then as the week goes on, we're going to cover everything. I can only do about 2 hours a night. So we'll start off with Randall Rouser today. We might do some of the Diablo Critics critique. We're going to end the week watching Gavin's original video. That will probably actually be my open room day. So when we do Gavin's stream, assuming it'll be Thursday, that will be my open room. And then anybody who wants to come in and talk about this. This is not usually the kind of topic that most people want to speak on. So I can understand if it ends up being an empty room. That's fine. But I'm going to have it an open room when we actually talk about Gavin's video directly. That sound good? Sound fair? Okay. So, and again, I'm sorry for the improper intro. I should have vetted what I was checking, but I was interested in some birthday thing that's coming up. My birthday's in a few days, and I was interested in that. So, sorry about that. It's inappropriate to the topic that we're about to cover. Anyway, here we go. We are beginning. This is Randall Rouser discussing his reaching out and rejection of his outreach by Gavin Ortlund.
This video is devoted to giving an update to my 2 or 3 week attempt to get Gavin Ortlund to respond to my criticisms of his war rape discussion on his apologetics channel. So I'm going to go through some tweets and kind of give you a timeline of how things developed and where they are now. As you can see, things began May 9th. Gavin posted a discussion of Deuteronomy 21:10-14, where he was arguing that this doesn't lead to rape or sexual contact without consent because there really are reasonable accommodations being made to the females described in the passage. So I made a 20-minute video responding to his video, same day, posted it, just outlining some of the very serious critiques.
And we're going to do that video next. We're going to do Randall Rouser's response to Gavin next. It's going to take me a second to find it. I don't have it propped up, okay? We're going to go continue with this one.
And I
am going to speed it up.
Gavin in
just
the tweets. I was hoping he would watch it and respond
slow.
because we had just had an interaction. He knew who I was. He knows that I'm an academic and an apologist who's been working in areas related to these matters for many years. So Gavin didn't respond to that initial one. So I posted another tweet 3 days later, and I just tagged him again and said, look, in this video, what I wanted to do in this tweet is to outline in very summary, preliminary form some of my concerns with Gavin's presentation to help him understand, from my perspective, why this was important for him to consider and address. So I said, Gavin defends Deuteronomy 21, a passage that describes the process by which Israelite soldiers may marry orphan girls after they've killed the families of those girls. Now just think about that, right? So in this passage, what it's describing is the soldiers can come in, massacre my mother, father, 3 brothers, an older married sister, and take the one 15-year-old terrified girl and give her 30 days to mourn the family that the soldiers just slaughtered. And then she is told, now you are to marry one of the soldiers who killed your family. And you ask a simple question in terms of human psychology. Are these the kinds of conditions that are consistent with a female giving free consent to marriage, let alone to sexual contact within that marriage? And if not, and I think clearly not, and I explain that much more in the video, then this in fact is the problem of sexual assault among everything else, which goes to the heart of Gavin's defense. So I wanted him to think about that and defend it. And I concluded not only in my estimation does he fail to defend Deuteronomy 21, but his defense of the passage exhibits a lack of understanding of the nuances in sexual consent. And that has all sorts of practical implications. I provide a critique here. So again, I'm encouraging Gavin, please look at this, because I think this is really important. So I don't think that he understands concepts in terms of sexual assault, in terms of the engagement of the individual, such as tonic immobility, collapsed immobility, and dissociation from the event. So that if we don't understand how people respond under trauma to things.
And what Randall Rouser is saying here is absolutely true. By the time I was in 5th grade, I was a full-blown drunk. I was going to school drunk. to deal with things. You disassociate, you run into fantasy worlds. You don't have to be crazy to do any of these things. These are just normal human response functions. You seek pleasure and solitude in those who, uh, I mean, they're technically your friends, but they're probably not the most healthy choices of friends. They're people with their own issues. And I started skipping school, doing all of that. My friends who are survivors, and you know, um, got in trouble. Didn't really listen to the rules, and didn't always handle things maturely or like adults because we weren't. Um, this is an aspect of the rebellion stuff that I don't normally talk about, so I'm not comfortable speaking on that. And like I said, I had a very different um, solution than my female friends had who went through what they went through. So, and also, a lot of the guys that I know, even as they uh, matured, they didn't necessarily get the big muscles or the attitude or any of that kind of stuff. So all that stuff, while tropey in a movie, is not how real life works. In real life, you have to work out to get the muscles. You have to take martial arts classes or read martial arts books or get a trainer or mentor who teaches martial arts to learn how to fight. It's not like this stuff just happens like it does in the movies. Um, and you have to learn coping skills and meditation, and it takes years. It's not like one good summer will fix things for you.
It's like contact, sexual contact, then we will not be able to identify when sexual consent has or has not occurred and when a sexual assault is occurring. And I note at the very end here again, this has practical implications because your defense of ancient Israelite soldiers marrying off terrified, traumatized virgin girls to other soldiers that killed their families can impact how you now understand the issue of sexual consent when a pastor is charged with having a relationship with a parishioner today. It has all sorts of practical implications. And I was hoping that Gavin would look at this and consider how his apologetic can have very harmful.
And the Catholic Church has a lot of experience with this. I know that this happens a lot in Baptist and Presbyterian and Methodist communions as well, and also in mega churches are have a lot of problems with this. Um, I just think of Zacharias, Rabbi Zacharias, but the Catholic Church has dealt with this for years. I don't just mean in the 90s and 80s. I mean going back to before the Council of Trent, going back to uh, Vatican One, going back to the Council of Trent, Vatican One. You see all of this stuff uh, handled and described, and the proper procedure of how to handle a sexual scandal, and when to turn the priest over to the authorities, and what crime should be judged by his authority versus what crime should be judged by the Pope. All that stuff is laid out. So this is not new material. This is not something that's new to the world. And I think Ronda Rousey is completely correct in how serious of a matter this is and how far reaching these kind of justifications and implications of these justifications, how far they reach and how easy it is for someone to misapply the lesson or to misinterpret the lesson.
And
I
dangerous
got a thing
consequences
going on. I'm
in
going to get a little
retrenching
band-aid.
harmful
I'll be right
attitudes
back.
within the evangelical Christian community. Well, Gavin didn't respond to that. So I tagged him on May 21st and said, I would love to hear your reply to my critique of your Deuteronomy 21 video. I detail many concerns in my critique, including that you don't seem to grasp the sexual issue of consent, which is essential to any discussion of sexual assault. Gavin replied, I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. Hope to soon. Thank you. He was very polite, but I think also very dismissive. He's trying to frankly, put me off. I've been asking him since May 9th, 2 weeks now, to simply take 20 minutes out of his time to look at what I've enumerated as very serious consequences and a very serious critique of his apologetic defense. And so I said, look, thanks. It only takes 20 minutes. I look forward to your response. So A day later, I thought, you know what? Maybe he doesn't have time to watch it, but he could sit down for a dialogue on these issues. So I reached out to Cameron Bertuzzi at Capturing Christianity, who graciously expressed willingness to host a discussion between Gavin and myself. And so I said, hey, Gavin, would you be open to a dialogue on Deuteronomy 21? Capturing Christianity is open to hosting. Now, what I thought this would do, it would alleviate from Gavin the need to watch my video if he didn't have the time and then to formulate a response. Instead, we could simply have a discussion in real time. It would only take an hour, right, out of your time. And then we could really allow light to shine forth on this very important issue. Gavin said, I'm so sorry, I still haven't watched your video. I'm preparing to travel out of the country soon. It's in my queue, though. I really can't say anything until I've watched your video. Now, I'm not sure why that is, why he can't say anything until he's watched the video, except maybe it's a kind of damage control thing. I mean, if he's too busy to watch it, he can just sit down and have a dialogue. I'm an academic, I'm not a troll. We could certainly have a conversation about this. So that's May 21st. I'm repeating that tweet at the top here of this slide. And then you can see me waiting a week and then responding, or even 9 days. And then I respond, hey, Gavin, have you watched my 20-minute rebuttal yet? As I said, Capturing Christianity is open to hosting.
I do think it's a little weird to assume cowardice or malintent or to his rejection of Randall Rouser's proposal. People reject coming to my channel all the time, and I have a very long history on this channel where people can look to see that I'm not a troll and I do real conversations with people, even people who completely disagree with me or hate my position. I treat them with respect. People are busy. People don't necessarily want to have an argument about certain things. People have other things going on in their lives. Gavin has a junk ton of kids. I mean, so I don't think it's proper to, without evidence, to be accusing Gavin in this way. But I get it. I really do. This is a very hot topic, one that I don't really want to touch on, and one that I feel it's almost unfortunate that it's come to my feet. But here we are.
Us in a discussion on the topic. Now he replies, he says, yes, I watched it last Friday. So that was more than a week ago before. He said, I will pass on a dialogue for now, but thanks for offering. End of story. So that's where we stand now. So now I want to offer a quick debrief for this, what I think is a very disappointing exchange. Now, let me preface this by saying I can identify four primary reasons why a person is not going to engage critically in a dialogue or in a critique of another person. First of all, maybe that critique is just too long. It's just unreasonable to engage in it. So Mike Winger, for example, I think he produced like a 12-hour video or something.
To be fair, I had this happen with Mindshift where I was critiquing his stuff. I wasn't trying to get a response from him at all. I didn't think he was going to even see my stuff. And he got upset that I did this is before I had the watch along format, but that I did basically what is now a watch along to some of his videos, and he was very upset that I did that. Hence, that's why I haven't watched any more of his material, because I'm not interested in upsetting anyone. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not even interested in apologetics. I'm very fervent. I don't like apologetics. Just to be very clear, I don't like the bullshit. It's lying. And a video that I was going to do instead of this, I was going to do a guy named Black Bear, I believe, atheism or something like that, and I was going to contrast it with Trent Horn, who he's doing some stuff with inspiring philosophy, and he's trying to defend apologetics, saying that Kip and Bowen and everyone else is doing apologetics, that I'm doing apologetics, but we're not. We're literally doing the opposite of apologetics. We're doing counter apologetics and anti-apologetics, because we're tired of being lied to, and we're tired of people being manipulated by lies. It's not acceptable. And Gavin is a great apologist, but he's an apologist. And I do think that's part of the problem. He's defending Christianity and the Bible instead of acknowledging what the implications are of his understanding.
Discussing egalitarianism. And if he was like primarily critiquing like one other guy, and then he was saying, "Hey, have you watched my 12-hour video yet? Come on, let's watch the video, and I want to have a dialogue with you based on the video." You can understand if someone's going to say, "Look, I don't have 12 hours. I'm not going to sit down and watch your 12-hour critique of my position on egalitarianism." So I get that. But my video
And one more note on my own. I have an associate's in philosophy. I'm a dumbass. I'm I'm an ex-car salesman. Okay, so I'm not saying that academics are required to come to my state on my small channel to defend themselves. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just sympathizing and empathizing with Randall here.
wasn't 12 hours, it was 20 minutes. Second reason I think that you might not engage with somebody is if you think it's just so obvious that they don't know what they're talking about, maybe so they're ignorant, perhaps they're also acting in bad faith, they're a troll. I'm neither one of
That is yet to be seen.
those. I am a former professor. I have a PhD in systematic theology. I'm a licensed professional investigator with trauma-informed interviewing
I didn't know that part. That's interesting.
training. So I do a lot of work in precisely this area, not only the area of biblical violence.
So when I was a personal trainer, I did a lot of self-defense stuff, and you would find that people's personal issues would come up, and the conversations you would end up having would be very intense, and you would get to know the person very deeply, because of whatever trauma brought them into the self-defense class. So, while I'm not a professional in the way that Randall Rouser is, I can tell you that hearing other people's stories of horrific abuse is rough. It's hard, and it does change the way you think. You can't help if you're human and you have compassion. It can't help but change the way you think.
And interpreting biblical violence, which I've been speaking on for years, which I wrote a book on, but also in terms of the concept of sexual consent and sexual assault and sexual harassment and abuse. That's what I work in day to day in my day job now as an investigator, a full-time investigator. So I definitely know what I'm talking about. I'm a worthwhile interlocutor. The third is if a person in their critique has engaged in invective, in ad hominems, just fiery rhetoric, something like that. It's just, yeah, I don't want to engage with that. Again, that's not me. I mean, I think I was direct. I think that Gavin has views that are false and harmful. But
Again, a false equivalency here. I kind of feel that way with Trent Horn. I feel like Trent has talked to some very small channels now, and he still hasn't talked to me. And I feel it's just because I don't like his take on homosexuality. I think that's why he doesn't want to talk to me.
I'm not engaging in invective. I'm speaking plainly and providing reasons for my judgments. And the fourth reason maybe you might not engage with somebody is if you think the issues that they've raised are simply trivial and are really not germane to the central heart of your argument. Again, that's exactly not the case here. I think the issues that I raised in terms of Gavin's poor understanding of sexual consent and including concepts.
I don't know if it's a poor understanding of sexual consent so much as it is a mislabeling or misunderstanding of what the Bible was speaking about. I do think he applied the wrong. I do think he applied the wrong reasoning here. No, I don't think he had the right. I don't think he understood what topic the Bible was speaking of. Don't get me wrong. There are implications that can go into what Gavin was speaking, but I don't think that was the main point. It's like, yeah, there's a positive implication here, but there's also many negative implications. You're assuming that the Levitical priesthood or the Davidic king is going to interpret these passages the same way that you in 2024 America are going to interpret it as a Christian pastor. You kind of have a lot more evolved ethics and understanding of how history unfolds that this particular king or these particular set of priests wouldn't have had. And again, that's assuming that the writing is it's assuming a literal historical version of the text, which the text probably isn't doing that. It's probably not doing history. So I okay.
like tonic immobility and collapsed immobility and dissociation when people are in trauma, experiencing trauma and responding to stimuli such as a person who wants to marry them, have sexual contact with them, when that
And again, everyone that I know who has been through situations, who have been through trauma and are survivors, I don't like using the word victims. Sexuality gets really confused for a really, really long time. And even after you're good, there's it's like PTSD, man. It can come back at any time, you know. I think Randall has some, and I know that he's a little bit soft on other hard religious topics, and maybe that's why you're not interested in dialoguing him on this particular point, because he's shown himself to be a little bit more liberal and on other issues. Gavin, I get that, but Jimmy Akin and a few other big Catholic and even secular apologists, if you want to use that word, have engaged with Randall Rouser, and he has been a good faith interlocutor. So if you would have asked me maybe 3 years ago, maybe I wouldn't be as trusting as I am now with him on a topic this inflammatory. But I've now seen him engage and interact and assist and partner with those who are more conservative, and he doesn't trash their point of view. He doesn't just come with the liberal point of view or woke point of view or progressive point of view. He engages with what material's in front of him honestly, and I think that's reason enough to give him a chance to try to change your mind. Let him try to convince you, and if he doesn't convince you, fine, then he didn't convince you, but at least you gave him that opportunity.
individual and or some of his fellow soldiers just massacred their family 4 weeks before. These are issues that are central to Gavin's entire defense of Deuteronomy 21, 10 to 14. And he just blew me off. I didn't want to have any engagement with me. Note that he says he watched the video, but he would not give even a single sentence responding to the video, saying, this is what I misunderstood. This is how I misrepresented him. This is why I'm wrong and he's right. He would not give a single sentence reply. All he did was say, yeah, not going to engage with you, not going to have a dialogue, not going to write anything further on what you said. Have a nice day. Thanks for engaging. Now, what this is yeah, you're being polite, but you're also blowing people off. And I think this is precisely what gives Christian apologists like Gavin Ortlund a bad name, is that when you press them on important issues and provide counter evidence, then like this, it seems to me that they're more interested, Gavin in this case is more interested in preserving his brand than it.
And I hate to say this because my channel's not big enough to warrant what I'm about to say, but that is how I felt when Mindshift started showing up on a lot of people's channels. When I've been doing this for 11 years, and my opinions in the Catholic community don't seem to matter. But Mindshift, who's very easy to destroy his arguments are rote, they're trite, they're passé. Yeah, apologists brought him on so they could beat him up and they could make themselves look good and they could make it look like, hey, I'm beating up the atheist. And he, of course, would go on because that's going to build his name and build his career and help him have more outreach and say, hey, look, to my fellow atheists, I'm fighting against the biggest Christians out there, the biggest apologists currently. I'm on the same stage as them. And I think Randall Rouser deserves to be on that same stage. And Mindshift does not.
Admitting that he made an error and retracting a video, recognizing that it is false and harmful.
And Holdsworth does not.
And finding a new way to engage with Deuteronomy 21, and I think a more fruitful, theologically and ethically integral way than the one that he has already proposed.
Yes, ma'am.
For me, however, to do that, to have agreed to a dialogue with me, to have agreed to revise and reject positions he had previously held when wrong, that is a sign not of weakness, but of integrity, of intellectual strength. St. Augustine himself, at the end of his life, wrote a book called Retractions, where he went back and he looked at all the theological positions he had previously held and how he had now retracted them and changed his mind on them. And I think we all
In all honesty, I regret buying Retractions. It's like of the apologetical books I bought, the Catholic Answer books, the general apologetical books from the Protestants, and Retractions are the ones that I regret. Sorry.
all need to do this at some point in our life. And again, to do that is a sign of integrity. It shows that you really care about truth. Gavin ministers in his apologetics ministry under the rubric, under the brand of Truth Unites. And if Truth Unites, well, then if I've offered a true and important critique of Gavin's defense and interpretation of Deuteronomy 21, 10 to 14, one that has huge existential implications and potential ethical implications for our understanding of sexual consent today, then I think that for him to have the integrity to live and stand under the banner of Truth Unites would require him to engage and carefully to consider and respond to those criticisms and then retract his arguments where I have indeed shown them to be false and harmful. So that's my debrief. And frankly, that's why I'm pretty cynical about so much of this professional Christian apologetics ministry industrial complex, because it is.
This part hurt me, and not in a bad way. There's not like a bad pain, but I felt exactly what he just said right here about being cynical about the Christian apologetical industrial complex. I had this happen to me 2 years ago when I switched my branding to anti-apologetics. I was so disappointed at what I was seeing coming out of Catholic Answers, because I spent my first 5 years, 4 years of doing, when I was doing apologetics on this channel, or not doing apologetics officially on this channel, beating up Protestants for doing exactly what Jimmy Akin and Trent Horn are doing now. And it broke my heart, honestly, to see them go dishonest to win converts over truth. And that was heartbreaking for me. It didn't hurt my faith, thank God, but it did make me not trust apologetics. It made me look deeper into what apologetics are and how it works, and examine apologetics and how the game is played. Unfortunately, I think Randall Rouser is correct here at this accusation. And that's not to say that I dislike Gavin. I love Gavin. I'm subscribed to his channel. I support him. I tell real intellectuals whenever I get to speak to them to engage with Gavin, because I think he has some of the best arguments out there. But I do think Gavin's an apologist. And that comes both with the good and the bad version of that word. All right, let's go on to Randall Rouser's critique of Gavin's actual video. And then if we still have time, we will begin the Diablo Critics video on Gavin. That one's probably going to take 2 nights, because that's like a long video. So that one will probably be tomorrow night and the next night. And then on the 4th night, on Thursday, we'll have the open room. And we'll be watching Gavin's original video. Okay, let's live screen this. All right. Let's not have any more VTuber content pop up in the middle of such dramatic. I'm so unprofessional. It's okay. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Okay, Randall Rouser. I know there's a few people lurking. You're welcome to talk if you guys want. Even though I'm not doing an open room, my chat is open. If you want to talk, if you want to have any questions, feel free. I know this isn't as fun as the Dinesh stuff. I'm sorry about that. While I do like talking about serious stuff, I don't like going on topics like this, you know? Let's see the video of him countering Gavin. No, I think I already found it, but let me just be sure. Thank you, New Atheist. I was going to do, I already had a Randall Rouser video set playlist already set up. And it was going to be on his critiquing of, I can't remember the guy's name. It was going to be a critique on a different guy. Okay, we're gonna go with two videos from Randall, so we might not get to them yet. Here we go. Let's do this. Tough topics. Hold on, still waiting for it to play. And I do want to say one more thing. While I do have experience and personal knowledge related to this conversation, I'm not going to be sharing it here. I probably won't be sharing it this week. If I want to talk about that stuff, I'll talk about it to you one-on-one. If it comes up in a real conversation, this is not the place for that. Okay? So if anyone wants to ask, don't bother.
Really wasn't that familiar with, but I've gotten to know him a little bit in the last couple of days. So he posted this video providing a defense, an apologetic defense, or reading of references to Israelite holy war against allegations or charges of genocide. And he took a very strong and bold thesis. He tried to defend that no non-combatants were targeted or harmed in these battles. And I think that's just honestly, I think that's patently indefensible. I've already had this conversation with Paul Coban, and I had some back and forth with Gavin following the first video I posted in response, and then I made a follow-up video that, to my knowledge, he hasn't replied to. But I will say that I really appreciated him and enjoyed interacting with him. That he seems like a really stand-up, nice person, very much in terms of First Peter 3:15, giving a
Being nice and polite doesn't mean you can't be evil. There's a problem there as well. Just because someone's nice doesn't mean they can't be evil. There's no rule in the Bible that says you have to be nice. Just, I'm being blunt here. I love Gavin. Again, I'll defend him. I will keep defending him. But being nice doesn't mean that someone can't be a hypocrite.
reason for the hope that lies within, and doing so with gentleness and respect. He definitely has that part. He's a great exemplar of that kind of character of engagement with others. But again, I think that was unsuccessful. Now, he posted another sort of a follow-up video this morning about Deuteronomy 21, a specific passage where he argues, where many critics argue that it can lead to war rape, and he's defending the passage against the allegation. And again, I think he's unsuccessful in his apologetic defense. I actually think, however, that there are also some deeper concerning issues underlying his analysis. So what I want to do, I have one of my dogs with me here. What I want to do is review the passage and then offer some real critical response to his analysis or defense. So here's Deuteronomy 21. The passage in question is verses 10 to 14, and I've actually taken a screenshot of the passage as it appears in Gavin's video. He says, when the passage says, when you go out to war against your enemies and the Lord your God gives them into your hand and you take them captive and you see among the captives a beautiful woman and you desire to take her to be your wife and you bring her home to your house, she shall shave her head and pare her nails. And she shall take off the clothes in which she was captured and shall remain in your house and lament her father and her mother a full month. After that you may go into her and be her husband and she shall be your wife. But if you no longer delight in her, you shall let her go where she wants. But you shall not sell her for money, nor shall you treat her as a slave, since you have humiliated her. Okay, so that's the...
I want to talk a little bit here about death and humiliation. Good morning, Tony. I want to talk a little bit here about death and humiliation. So, when I was 6 years old, my sister had already passed, and my favorite aunt had died. And then my mom got sick, and my mom died within a few months. Those were three major deaths back to back to back. Those were the first three. They weren't the last. After the first three big deaths, people started treating me differently. And I don't know if I started acting differently. I don't have any idea. But my dreams began to change. I began to have nightmares every night, usually about a dinosaur. The dinosaur would eat different members of my friends or my family, and then it would eat me. And somehow I'd always live and survive. And as more people died, so as my cousins started getting sick and my and suffering began to get worse, people would lose their limbs and stuff like that. The dinosaur got bigger, and the nightmares got more intense, more real. And this lasted till about 8 years old, 9 years old. And so that was one way of trying to understand these kind of issues. But once I was able to start comprehending and compartmentalizing death, once it started becoming 20 people, 30 people, 40 people dead in my life, I then started getting picked on for being a sissy, for being soft. And humiliation started pretty quickly after the bullying started. Getting spit on. Girls that would like me would be ridiculed for liking me. Rumors, lies, that kind of stuff. Just brutal stuff. And getting jumped, getting beat up. Eventually I learned how to fight and I got to beat everyone who was picking on me. I got to beat them all up, which that was a cool thing. That doesn't, most people, not everybody gets to do that. But before I got strong, the humiliation was so intense that I would have pain, physical pain, in my stomach before I went to school. I didn't understand that it was dread. I know it's dread now as an adult, but as a kid, I did not understand that the humiliation was giving me dread. And so I would feel a physical pain, like a sharp stabbing pain inside, usually around my pancreas and around my liver, where your hormones built in. So my body's overproducing hormones, stress hormones, fight or flight hormones. My dad was an alcoholic and I was a latchkey kid, so I would have to swallow all this stuff on my own. And of course, I started making friends with older kids and started doing stupid stuff. Well, that's a different story. But humiliation makes you seek out these comforters, these outliers, these outsiders, and we find each other. You'll hear in these groups, in these communities, a phrase that unfortunately isn't true, but man, do we believe it, which is, blood doesn't make family. We choose our family. And we really thought we were each other's family. We thought we could rely on each other. When you're a messed up kid, another messed up kid is not reliable. But it feels that way at the time. Because you're surviving. And when your goal is survival, thriving isn't even a question. It's not even something you think about. Morality doesn't even come into the equation. So the problem is that you start viewing yourself as the good guy, and viewing everyone else as the bad guy. So suddenly the whole world doesn't matter. Suddenly only you and your group matters, and you can form unhealthy attachments and that kind of stuff. So when Deuteronomy, when the Bible is using this language, this is very evolved, very complicated, very accurate language to trauma, to death, to humiliation. And these are words that, in my experience, are more than just emotional words. They're technical words. They're describing something real. Even if the event itself never happened, the writer understood something real about war. And I think Gavin does not understand that because he thinks this is literal. He doesn't understand that this part here is supposed to be more real than the rest of the story. He doesn't understand the psychology, the advanced psychology that's being recorded here long before Freud or Jung ever came into the scene. This is a great understanding of trauma, a great description of trauma and what happens and how it happens. So, yeah.
Passage, and I now want to discuss Gavin's apologetic defense of it in my critical response. First thing I want to say by way of response is there's a real, I think, an irony here that this video comes right after the previous video. And remember, in the previous video, Gavin was arguing that non-combatants were not killed in the wars that Israel had with other peoples. Israel, the soldiers would only battle against soldiers, not against non-combatants like women and children.
And to me, that just makes me think that Gavin is hopelessly naive and idealistic about who the Israelites were as a people. I would almost advise him to look at what's happening right now in Palestine and Israel, to look at that conflict and look at how ugly and how unclean that fighting is. Look for a good guy on either side. You will not find one easily. Look for a villain on either side. You will not find one easily. Look for a victim on either side, and you will find many easily. Gavin is looking at an ancient time of battle when the ethics that we have today did not exist, and applying this idealistic pedestal to the Israeli people. It's not true today, and it wasn't true back then. It's not true of their enemies either. I've seen people do that, where they try to idealize and victimize the enemies. No, the enemies were just as brutal and just as capable of brutality as the Israelites. Don't think they weren't. But don't think that the Israelites' hands were any cleaner than the Canaanites or the Amorites. They're all from similar cultures. They all had similar faults. And they all had similar possibilities, greatness, righteousness, honor. I've seen ancient warfare described in over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. In over 60 books on ancient warfare. Prime sources. Translated. It's never pretty. And it's never easy. And it's never good.
The infants, the elderly, the handicapped, etc. They would not harm those individuals, just soldiers. However, now we turn to Deuteronomy 21, and what's the first thing we read? When the father and mother have been killed by the Israelite soldiers, the Israelite army, this is what you do to their daughter. This is how you can treat her if you want to marry her. So right there in black and white on the page, we have a reference to women, to mothers being killed by the Israelite soldiers. It's just one more example of a flat disconfirmation of Gavin's attempt to argue that civilians were not targeted, they were not treated as objects of killing within these battles. They clearly were. And so that is a profound moral problem for an apologist like.
And again, Raulzer is completely correct here. And again, this is not unique to Israel. This is ancient warfare. This is how it was done.
Like Gavin, who wants to defend the moral status of the text and the claim that God commanded these things, in fact, this kind of killing, or that he in any way approved of it. Okay, but now let's turn to the topic of rape. Obviously, the issue here is that this female, now Gavin often says woman in his video. I'm going to say girl because one thing that's interesting here in Deuteronomy 21, it doesn't refer to a husband having been killed. It refers to a girl's parents having been killed. So that suggests, for the most part, that what Israelite soldiers are most focused on, this would really fit with Numbers 31 as well, by the way. They're really focused on are virgin girls who are not yet married out. In Numbers 31, all of the Midianite women described in passage, and men and boys are killed, but the virgin girls are spared for the Israelite soldiers. And so here, I think similarly, we can say the primary, and I'm not saying exclusively, there may have been married women who had their husbands killed and were taken by Israelite soldiers. But for the most part, really what we're talking about here are girls. So 15, 16, 17-year-old girls who are not yet married out, not, and by our standards, not legal adults. They're still children, right? Okay, so one of the issues.
And one of the problems with what he just said there is by our standards. That's one of the problems, is that we're anachronistically putting our standards onto an ancient society. Ancient fiction or not, we're putting our standards onto their storytelling.
Oh, I'm going to say, first of all, maybe
I want to be clear. We all like Game of Thrones. We all like House of the Dragon. These are brutal stories. Brutal. Fiction, but brutal. I would not want an apologist for America 3,000 years from now trying to justify the moral actions in the fictional books Game of Thrones, because in the corpus of American literature, they're considered a high point. Do you understand? Do you understand the problem that Gavin has here? He's taking something whose purpose was not literal history, calling it literal history, and using it to defend practices that may or may not have been done by the Israelites. Not only is that missing the point of the story, but it's misapplying the lesson of the story. And it's a bizarre problem that he has, because he has to hold to literal interpretation. He has to hold to sola scriptura. And I do think B.S. Lewis is right there. Sola scriptura holds him, chains him to this terrible defense of terrible actions.
Broad response to Gavin's video is, which I've linked below in the show notes. My broad response is, I think it's a very valuable and helpful discussion, but I think it suffers from overt confirmation bias. So he's trying to have as favorable a reading of Deuteronomy 21 as he can. And as a result, he ends up distorting certain things, bypassing certain issues, downplaying issues and dangers, which I'm going to now highlight. So while I think it's definitely worth watching, I don't think it's worth watching without significant caveats, including at the end of the day, to recognize that, in fact, he does not successfully demonstrate that rape did not occur and was not broadly sanctioned by Deuteronomy 21, 10 to 14. Now, one interesting thing, when I watched the video, it was 27 minutes, Gavin doesn't define rape, which I think is interesting. I think that we have to really begin in the top of mind with, what does it mean to rape? Well, rape involves sexual contact in which consent has not been given by one party to that sexual contact. Now, next question is, well, what does it mean to give consent? Now, I'm going to speak not as a lawyer here, but I am going to speak, or a law expert, but I'm going to speak as someone who is a full-time workplace investigator who investigates various issues of misconduct, including sexual misconduct in the workplace, and has to have certain definitions in mind and know what they're looking for. So in order to have something like rape or sexual assault, we have to have a non-consensual sexual interaction of a sexual nature, um, including, of course, ultimately coital activity. Now, the next thing to note is that what does it mean to have consent? Well, you have to have particular elements to have consent. First of all, a person has to be able to consent. So, within, for example, Canada, you have to be 16 years old by law. If you're younger than 16, you can't legally consent to sexual activity. Now, it may also be, for example, that a person cannot consent because they lack mental capacity. Maybe they're incapacitated, like they're unconscious. Maybe they've been given, they passed out from too much alcohol, for example. Maybe they're in a counseling relationship and this is their counselor and they cannot consent to sexual activity freely with the counselor because they're in a counseling relationship as a patient. We can go on all sorts of examples like that. But the ability to consent has to be there in the first place. The next thing that has to be there is consent has to be expressed actively and in an ongoing manner. This is so important because we have a very good understanding now that we didn't always in the past of a concept called tonic immobility. Now, when people are in high stress, traumatic situations, what people often will do is used to be called the freeze response in animals that have a similar response. It's been called playing dead. But people will go into a very passive state. In the most extreme cases, they just may become unconscious and not recall the things that happen. But in other cases, in tonic immobilization, they will just become very compliant with the activity and do what the other person says. But what is, and so if you're not in tune to evidence of tonic immobility, then you may be the actor in a sexual encounter with another individual, and you're engaging with them in a way that you believe to be romantic, and they're responding to you by going along with it, quote unquote. But that could be a tonic immobility response of trauma in which they haven't actually given consent. And so what you have to do is you have to look for active and enthusiastic signs that they are in fact consenting, including, yes, I'm happy with this. Let's do this, versus wording like, I don't know, I'm unsure, I'm uncomfortable, or just a tonic immobility withdrawal. Now, last thing you also want to look for, another thing anyway, is that the demonstration of active participation and enthusiasm is ongoing and continues to be present throughout the encounter. So these are all things that you want to look for in order for there to be sexual consent. And if there is not, then there could be sexual assault occurring if there is not consent present, or there could be rape.
I know this is an inappropriate comment, but wow, monetization is probably going to be impossible after this video.
Now, that's important when we come to this passage. So here's, let's draw the picture now of what is actually being described in Deuteronomy 21. Girl, 15, 16, 17 years old, has just witnessed her parents being killed by Israelite soldiers, and potentially her brothers and siblings as well, like we have in Numbers 31. Ask yourself a question. What would be the response, or psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, for a 15, 16, 17-year-old girl to just have witnessed her beloved parents being killed in front of her, and maybe, her two older brothers as well? Her whole family's been wiped out. They've been massacred. What would be her response to that? I mean, I cannot begin to imagine the degree of trauma, horror that she would be experiencing in that case. Now you have an Israelite soldier, perhaps one of the very soldiers who killed her family, says to her, you're attractive. I want to marry you. Now ask yourself this. In that circumstance, can the first principle of consent ever be present? Can a person who has been so traumatized that they've just witnessed their entire family being massacred by the soldier, can they freely consent to have a marital and sexual relationship with this individual? I think that that's an extraordinary claim. And it's one that I would say very strongly is manifestly false. So I just don't think that you can even talk about having consent for a child that has just had her family massacred, that she can consent to sexual activity in marriage with a soldier that killed her family. Now, Gavin, one of the things he points out is he says, well, in much of the ancient world, when a female family was massacred like this, she was given 7 days to mourn. But in this passage, in Deuteronomy 21, she's given 30 days to mourn, and that's better. I mean, all things being equal, it's less bad. Well, it doesn't mean it's good. I think about this. Which is worse, to be sexually assaulted when you're in a deep sleep, or to be sexually assaulted when you're awake at gunpoint? Well, I mean, it's worse, I would think, all things being equal, to be sexually assaulted when you're awake at gunpoint. It doesn't mean that sexually assaulting someone when they're asleep is somehow some benevolent concession. And so similarly, you have a 16-year-old girl who's just witnessed her family massacred. She's given 30 days to mourn her family before she has to marry the man who potentially murdered her family. Given 30 days instead of 7, and we're supposed to be enthusiastic about that. I'm going to say no. Now, another thing that really concerns me, and this is where we get.
And I know I'm not saying much on this one, but again, this is something that I'm taking on these videos almost reluctantly. So I'm not looking to be a chatty Cathy today. I'm intaking information, learning, and analyzing. And I will be sharing my opinion as we continue on. When we get to the Diablo critics, I don't think I'm going to have to do the next video because this one's hitting so hard and it's right on point that I think I'm going to go straight into Diablo critics from here. I will speak more because they are being harsher and they are being playful, might be the wrong word, but they're being more engaging. This here is just harsh and accurate, and it's something you should think about.
Get into some of the more practical implications of this is, while again, Gavin doesn't define rape so far as I can see in the concept of consent. But what he does here is there's this focus upon rape as a sort of violent assault by like a stranger. And what I think Gavin really needs to consider more deeply is the degree to which rape can occur and does occur within marriages. Now, this has been a long problem within evangelical community. This lack of or failure to understand the degree to which rape can occur in all sorts of contexts. I want to give you potentially an extreme example here.
So Tony is asking a question in chat. He's asking if this is what I call straw manning. I'd need some more detail on your question. Do you mean that Gavin is straw manning? I don't think he's straw manning. I think he doesn't understand what it is that he's implying. If you're saying that Rouser is straw manning, I don't think he's straw manning at all. I think this is incredibly accurate and something that my guess, and this is just a guess, is that Gavin didn't consider any of these implications. Because if he did, then the video that he made is very irresponsible. But if he didn't consider, then the video that he made is a misunderstanding of almost everything that he spoke of.
What I think actually it is indicative of some tragically still common elements within evangelical Christianity. Okay, the transformed white.
And again, Rouser's talking about evangelical Christianity, but again, I'm a Catholic, and for the last 30 years, Catholics have had to deal with this problem up in our face. And like I said, this is not a new problem in the Catholic Church. Sexual misconduct, sexual abuse goes back as far back as I know. It's being condemned by the church fathers. So impropriety is a true problem. Go read The Monk. Go read, let me be very clear. Adults who are okay reading about sexuality, go read the Marquis de Sade. You'll get a very different picture of how France viewed religious people. It's not what you think. It is way worse than what you can imagine if you don't have a mind for such things, for such imaginings.
Wife is a well-known blogger and tweeter or ex-poster or whatever it is today. And this was one of her most infamous tweets, I think, from a few years ago. I think this was back in like 2019. There was a controversy over it, and she ended up writing a blog article saying that she doesn't support rape in any way. But this was the beginning of a question. So a woman's husband wanted sex with her, but she said no. She woke up in the middle of the night and he was having sex with her. She asked me if this was marital rape. It was the first time he had done this, and he was never physically abusive toward her. I told her, no, don't even think like that. And then she goes on. So this again, this is extreme, yes. But I think what is expressed here are some underlying sentiments that are really have an inadequate appreciation for how important consent is at all times and in all relationships, including in marriage. If we don't appreciate that, there's a real danger, right? That we could be encouraging people to remain in abusive relationships, which are relationships in which people are being sexually assaulted because they're not giving consent to sexual activity. Just because you're married doesn't mean that your spouse has rights over your body. It shouldn't work like that. And so in this case, my concern is that when Gavin in his apologetic focuses on the fact that well they were married, then somehow that is going to allow for consent, I think is just a really dangerous idea. Because again, I think the idea that a 16, 17-year-old who witnessed her family massacred and then does marry this fellow, that she is somehow now going to be a willing participant and be able to consent as an agent to sexual contact with this individual in marriage is just profoundly flawed thinking. And I really worry, I think it's a reasonable concern that assumptions in an apologetic of Deuteronomy 21 could then corrupt the way that people think about sexual assault in the church today and in other contexts in our own day. So that is a concern for me. Another thing that Gavin says in this video is he addresses the fact, well, the critics will say, well, how can she consent to marrying this soldier? But then Gavin says, yeah, but it's an arranged marriage, and arranged marriages happen all the time, including today. Well, that is true. Arranged marriages do happen, including today. In fact, just a month ago or so, I met two Christians from India one of them was from India, and the other was Indian culturally, but was believed born in Canada, and they married 30 years ago, maybe, and they've been happily married, but it was from an arranged marriage. So yeah, arranged marriages happen. But Deuteronomy 21 is not describing an arranged marriage. Arranged marriages are arranged between two families. Those families begin to dialogue with one another, and there's an exchange, various social and perhaps economic arrangements are made, and then one person is married to another person, and those families are united. And of course, within much of royal history, this has occurred at the level of nation states, where Scotland, for example, would marry off a daughter to a king of France, and then that would establish a social relationship and an economic and a military relationship between Scotland and France. So there was a mutuality about the arrangement. But in Deuteronomy 21, what we have is the soldiers have come in, massacred the family, killed the mother and father, and then they're just taking the daughter. That's not an arranged marriage. So it's what that is a red herring. It's just and a non sequitur. It just does not apply to this circumstance.
So we're about to move on to the Diablo critics. I am going to say on this, there are not only apologetical, but there are logical formulas to get out of these type of situations in the conversation. I almost feel it'd be disrespectful to bring them up. I'm just going to mention them because it's relevant, not as a defense of the acts being described. So one thing that could be said is, of course, the obvious truth that this is an incident that didn't actually happen, even though it may have happened in history. This is not a description of that actual event. This is an implication being projected back into an idealized history, and this is telling a story about how to handle and how to think of your own ancestors that have integrated through this conquest that might not have really happened. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect is we're looking at it through the eyes of progressive revelation. The Israelites misunderstood what was being said by God. You say, well, how can that be? Well, because no one actually spoke to God. No one actually gets to see God. So what were they hearing? Who were they speaking to? And a problem when you try to say that it has to be God who spoke to them, and God the Father can't speak to them without destroying them, and you go with you go against typology and instead try to say that it's a Christophany, you have Jesus giving these commands then. That's very problematic. And I think Redeem Zoomer is an idiot for trying to use that as a defense of Old Testament apparitions of mystery characters. Has terrible, terrible implications for Christianity and for religion altogether. So that's a typology is good. Christophanies, not so good. I mean, just another hint on that. Listen to Tux TV talk about who the snake was in the garden, okay? But let's move away from Christophanies. So you have progressive revelation as a way to understand these verses. They misunderstood what God is about. So we continue on in the story until they understand that this is wrong. Okay, fine. You have the Megaleos, you have the Midrashes, you have all these different ways to understand everything. I think I'm using Megaleos correctly, but right now my brain's a little hyper intense from what I just heard. Hyper fixated, I guess. So you have that going on, but you also don't want to disconnect the Old Testament from the New. You want to keep them connected, keep them relevant to each other. So you can look for commentary in the New Testament to try to understand it. And I think that the Diablo critics do speak on that. So we're going to move on to that now. But just to understand that there are apologetical, rhetorical, logical ways to get to understand these passages and compartmentalize them and contain them and explain them in a way that doesn't lead to the justification of horrible crimes. That is doable. Gavin didn't do that. Gavin whitewashed the very passages he was highlighting. Okay. Let's go to the next one. I hope my sound is good. I hope everyone's able to hear me. Again, I know this is not the most fun topic, and I do not want to be talking about this a week from now, but we probably will be. Okay. So here we go.
With Norwegian.
Okay.
Think precision.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, here we go. So I'm guessing the next two nights are going to be watching Diablo Critics episode 4. We are going to start off, we're going to do 30 minutes right now. So we'll see how far we get into it. Okay. Okay, here we go. Let me adjust this just a little bit. I'm going to put myself over here so that way we can have the dialogue going because I'm going to have it on a little bit fast. Make sure everybody... Okay, go. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, go.
June the 16th. Happy Father's Day to all of you you fathers out there. And welcome to the show. I am Kip Davis. I'm a specialist in the Dead Sea Scrolls and early Jewish literature, and I am joined, as always, by my good friends. Jennifer, tell us who you are.
Sure. I'm Jennifer Bird. I'm a PhD in New Testament and early Christianity. I'm public biblical scholar, I suppose. My recent interest is in marriage and the Bible, both primary testaments of the Christian Bible. What does it actually say? What do people misunderstand about it? That kind of thing.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Who's next? Josh?
Joshua Bowen. I'm an Assyriologist with some focus on the Hebrew Bible. And yeah, I do a lot of like counter-apologetic stuff online.
He needs to start introducing himself as, I'm a man who collects bow ties. And that is my claim to fame. And he should never mention his degree and just say, I collect bow ties. I don't know why they invited me on here. I guess to talk about bow ties. And that should be his intro.
Dan?
Notice I didn't say the word slavery in any of
You
that.
didn't. It's true.
Right?
Until you then qualified your introduction.
Exactly.
Thank you, Dan.
I just felt it was necessary. So,
Yeah.
And I'm Dan McClellan. I was going to say Landshark because we were talking about deep cuts from SNL, but I position myself as a public scholar of the Bible and religion. My specialization is Hebrew Bible, cognitive linguistics, cognitive sense of religion, conceptualization of deity, scripture, and religious identity. And
I'll give my intro after Vishanti.
yeah, that's me.
excellent. Nice. So, I mean, there's a couple of new things going on here that people have noticed. There's some people.
Okay, no, I'll go ahead and give my intro now because he's going to say something. My name's Alpha. I'm a Catholic. I've read the Bible before, all the way through, front to back. Some may have heard I've read it 7 times. I have an associate's degree, Humanity of Arts. I've had a YouTube channel for 11 years. It began as a martial arts channel with Shadow Band. Now I'm doing this. It's now an anti-apologetics channel. There's a whole history there. I began as a liberal Catholic. Actually, when I started talking apologetics, I wasn't even a Catholic yet. I was still a Christian. But very liberal. Liberation theology was a heavy influence on me. And I guess I was a progressive and awoke before progressive and woke existed. And then through reading the Church Fathers, I conformed to Orthodoxy, and I am a Catholic now. I also collect comic books. I like weightlifting. Sunny days on the beach. And yeah.
Who are missing? Our host, our producer, David.
I have over 10,000 comic books. Just saying. Dan, I have over 10,000 comic books.
McDonald was unable to join us this morning because he has people sleeping in his studio. So decided, it's maybe not the best. As much as I tried to convince him, just
Minor details.
yeah, we want them there. We want them in the show. He thought maybe instead of waking people up at 4 a.m, with this was perhaps not the best choice for your guests. And also hard work has noticed. Yes, our friend Matthew Monger is not with us this morning. He has badly hurt his back, and he is out of commission for a while. So we miss Matt dearly today, and I hope at least he's able to check it out. Watch.
As always.
Right.
Bow tie on
So
point.
Megan made this
the
one.
boy tie. Did she really?
Aw.
Oh wow.
I tied it, right? I tied them. She made it. So just
Very
to be
liar. I don't believe it, man.
All right.
So
Is that a red poppy on the material or no?
I think so.
Yeah, that's very nicely placed. Yeah,
all right.
well done.
It's all the way down there, so I can't see it.
The other face on the screen here is
This isn't the right time or place for this, but I will say I cowardly did not apply to UT as I was supposed to. So yeah, that didn't happen. I didn't do it. I was supposed to have done it last week, and I didn't do it. I'm gonna get in trouble with my wife.
is our friend Vishanti.
Hello.
Vishanti, welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Try not to be starstruck, so just pretend that I'm screaming internally. And I'm just here to make sure that it runs smoothly and you won't
And it's a specific UT branch that's here where I live. I just don't want to mention where it is because if I mention where it is, then you know where I live. Don't want to do that.
See me a whole lot, unless they go off on too many tangents. In which case you'll see me get my chancla. So
We need someone to crack the whip. So Vashanti is here to help us out with that in David's absence.
Or as we used to say in Uruguay, bajar la caña, si es necesario.
Yeah, see, I don't know what that means.
este carnal, se me comprende. He
Ojito.
gets me. This guy. Yeah. So if you just hear like a ghost voice yelling "cállate," you'll know.
Excellent, awesome. All right, well we've got a video to get into today, but I'll just go through. I'll just run through as a reminder for everyone.
I'm gonna go get my
how
nasal
the show
spray while
works.
they're still doing
So the
intros.
Diablo Critics is a monthly show reviewing recent bad biblical scholarship on YouTube, and we've got a doozy for you today. This is also a platform for us as scholars to briefly share information about our current and ongoing projects. We feature a live Q&A at the end of every show. If there are specific questions that you have for specific panelists, please include their name at the start. For example, if you have a question for Dr. Dan, please include Dr. Dan's name, or Dr. Josh, include his name, etc. And because of time constraints, we want to get through this inside of 2 hours. We can probably go a little bit over that if necessary, but because of time constraints, we will only answer questions that are submitted in the first 60 or 70 minutes. Questions will be prioritized if they are super chatted. So if you have questions and you want them answered, please be sure to get them in early and before the Q&A starts. All right, I think that's good. So what are we doing today? We're watching this. Are you guys familiar with Gavin?
And I just want to be clear that even though we're sort of meta watching Gavin's video, we will still be watching Gavin's video directly once time comes.
Gavin Ortlund?
Just a
Over
little
at,
bit, not yeah.
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
You debated him or like done things like that with him, Josh?
We discussed him.
Yes. Josh and I had a discussion with Gavin and his friend Trent Horn, all about Josh's favorite topic. But I think it went okay. It was a little frustrating at times. But Gavin runs this channel called Truth Unites. He's a very nice guy. I really like Gavin. He's a good guy to have conversations with. Unfortunately, he gets a lot of things wrong. He recently published a couple of videos. He's working through like what looks like a series right now of tough passages in the Bible. He did one on the Canaanite conquest narratives recently, and decided that Deuteronomy 21 was such a singularly upsetting text of the Bible that it deserved its very own video. So this came out. I think just about a month ago. It was right around Mother's Day when this came out. It was right around the time that we did our biblical slavery discussion. So I thought it was important to go through this today. So Gavin's got a PhD from Fuller, which he earned in 2016 in historical theology, which will help explain a lot of the things that he has to say in this video. So he his dissertation was the doctrine of heaven in Anselm of Canterbury's Proslogion. He's also authored several books, many articles, and has been a pastor. Most recently, I believe, at the First Church of OJ. Is that really how it's pronounced? OJ in California.
Oh, hi.
That's pretty. Oh, is it Ojai?
Is it OJAI?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that's Ojai.
Nice.
Eric, actually. So.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, so we pronounce it OJ in Canada. He's currently theologian in residence at Emmanuel Church in Nashville, and is basically committed his energies full time, as I understand it, pretty much to the YouTube channel and the ministry, Truth Unites. So yeah, you guys ready to get into this? See what he's got to say.
All right, let's see it.
Deep breath, deep breath.
Here we go.
So the fun thing with the serpent is, how does a serpent talk? What? And not only that, but why is the serpent?
All right, Gavin and anyone else with actual degree, how does a serpent talk? Answer it. Be better than this guy. Show me why I shouldn't sign up for Hillside Online EDU today to get a degree so I can go teach in China. I was supposed to say that last part out loud, was I? That's okay.
Serpent's punishment.
Did the ancient Israel?
Okay, so because we're going to be talking about some trauma stuff, I want to get one thing out of the way. And I showed a different set of pictures before. But because my mom died and we transferred schools, I did get jumped. And it did change my attitude in my life and all of that. And so this is right after that happened. My heart did stop. I got into a fight the very next day with my best friend and beat the shit out of him. We're no longer best friends. So I went out of school for a little while and I went on a road trip. And this is two different photos. But if you want to see what trauma does to I don't know how old I was here. I'm going to say an 8-year-old kid. This is me going to California because I couldn't be in school because of what happened to me and then how I responded. So, yeah, it is 88. Okay, so this is me. It's not someone else. It's me. Here you go. Look at how unhappy I am. Just, yeah, that's great. And then here's another one. Just miserable. Good news. I'm no longer miserable. Anyway, those were fun times. And my heart only stopped for a little bit. I had an outer body experience. But yeah, the doctor and my dad were like, you're small and you're, soft. If guys are going to beat you up, you have to fight back. I was like, I don't want to fight back. And so the next day, I guess playfully, my friend picked on me and I responded back with hitting him very hard. I was stupid. What do you want?
Israelites commit war rape. This is a concern that's raised against the Bible. Those of us who are followers of Christ will probably hear this at some point. This is one of the toughest passages in the Old Testament to try to defend. So I hope that this video will help people. I hope that it will serve people. And I hope that it will help oppose the terrible practice of sexual violence and mistreatment of women and children. This is actually something that's a huge problem in the world today as well, especially through the influence of pornography. And just the way things are going is not good right now.
That reaction, Dan. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That link he made. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Credit right at the end there, eh? Yeah. So pornography bad.
I mean, just making that connection for this passage. Yeah, just
it's kind of crazy. Yeah. And we'll get into it. We'll get into the passage a little bit. One of the things I like, I think it's important that Gavin recognizes the difficulty of some of these things, or at least provides lip service to this. He says this is one of the toughest passages in the Bible for Christians.
To defend. Yeah.
To defend.
But I do want to quickly point out,
before Rowan goes, I will say this, and I find this is true when I talk to people who have been through similar experiences that I've had. These passages don't bother us. These are not the passages that mess us up. It's other inconsistencies. Like with me, it was how Paul seems to contradict Jesus. Like that's where I really had a lot of hiccups with Paul. And it wasn't even my first 2 or 3 read-throughs of the Bible front to back where I noticed those inconsistencies. It was like on the 7th time, that I've read it straight through that those inconsistencies started punching me in the face. a lot of the violence and the death, if you grew up around violence and death, unless you're, like, there are people who do respond with that kind of like pulling away. But if you've kind of integrated that stuff into your personality and into your identity, that's just a fact of life. So the horribleness, the warfare, all of that, didn't shock me as a teenager when I tried reading the Bible for the first time. So I don't know, maybe this is something more about my psychology, but yeah.
How much of a reaction that anyone on this panel would get if we started, let's say, a Dating of the Book of Daniel video saying, I really hope this emboldens, or helps out the atheists to, hold up our atheism or to disprove God.
I believe, yeah, well,
God, to make sure that we can put down the supernatural or something like that. Like the motivation being right out there in front, to really help people in their faith and to, defend the text or defend, like our view of the text or something like that. You pointed this out, Kip, in your stream that you did on the Canaanite conquest. And I think it's an important thing, how much of a pushback we would get.
I have a writing competition that I won. It's a generic win. It's not a real win, but I won. I wouldn't mind putting, and I have a CLRA certified tutor. I could put my degree, like right here. I could put my degree, and then put the CLRA, put the writing thing. I have a book in the Library of Congress. I could put that over here. It's a short story. I say book. It's a short story. It was about my dad. If you want to look it up, it's called a short story in a small town. Short story in a small town. I think that's what it's called. It has a really cool trick. You think you're reading English the whole time, but then when the teacher comes in, the teacher starts speaking English, and it's all gibberish. It turns out you're reading the whole story in Spanish. You just thought you were reading English. It's cool. It's cute. Okay. What else? I was saying something serious, and then that. Oh yeah. Okay. So serious. So I put up those, right? Then I can put up my TABC license, my insurance salesman license, and my loan officer license. I can put them all right here. And I was CPR certified at some point. I wonder if I could find that somewhere.
Get if we put our motivation, or if we, sorry, because I want that to not, if we made a statement like that was a motivation. Personally, I have no dog in the fight, although I am an atheist. Like, I'm not here to defend atheism or something.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, I just think that's.
I like how when he turned his head, it was like he was shocked to find out that he was an atheist. Like, what? His kid or his dog probably did something, but it just looked like he was like, what?
Bear's pointing out.
He does have a lot at stake.
By reading the passage, as I read it, you will understand why it's a difficult one. Many people call it the pretty woman text. Verse 10, when you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God gives them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire to take her to be your wife, and you bring her home to your house, she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall take off the clothes in which she was captured, and shall remain in your house and lament.
And for those wondering, the way that works is that the way you get your book registered or your short story registered is you pay for it and someone reviews it. I feel like it took longer than a year for them to review it, and then they keep it, and you get a little certificate saying that it's filed away. That's all. It's basically like a copyright. It's nothing special, but still, it's one of my proudest things that I have is that I did that. One day I'll be a published writer. One day it'll happen. I'm working on a book right now.
And her mother for a full month, and after that you may go into her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. But if you no longer delight in her, you shall let her go where she wants. But you shall not sell her for money, nor shall you treat her as a slave, since you have humiliated her. What do we do with this one, right? Here's my thesis. This is not a timeless ideal, but in its historical context, it was a protest against abuse.
I'm gonna give away this.
No. I hit the wrong thing. Hot dog it. Sorry. Is that it? Yeah, there you go.
All right, we'll get into the passage here momentarily, but I think it's important to one of the things I really like about Gavin and his stuff too is he's really organized. He's very clear.
Did I skip ahead?
He articulates stuff too. Is to
deal, but in its historical context, it was a protest against abuse. Her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife.
No,
If you no
I
longer
missed-
delight in her, you
I
shall
went too
let
far.
her go where she wants.
got a doozy for you today.
Mhm.
This is also a platform for us as scholars to briefly share information.
This is actually something that's a huge problem in the world today as well, especially through the influence of pornography and just the way things are going.
Right, yeah.
And we'll get into it. We'll get into the passage a little bit. One of the things I like, I think it's important that Gavin recognizes
Yeah.
to defend. There we go.
But I do want to quickly point out how much of a manual into like the motivation, on the Canaanite conquest. And I think it's an important thing how much of a pushback we would get if we put our motivation, or if we, sorry, because I want that to not, if we made a statement like that was a motivation. Personally, I have no dog in the fight, although I am an atheist. Like, I'm not here to defend atheism or something.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, I just
Yep.
think that's what Sarah's pointing out.
He does have a lot at stake.
By reading the passage, as I read it, you will understand why it's a difficult one. Many people call it the pretty woman text. Verse 10, when you go out to war
I've never heard it being called that.
against your enemies, and the Lord your God gives them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire to take her to be your wife, and you bring her home to your house. She shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall take off the clothes in which she was captured, and shall remain in your house and lament her father and her mother for a full month, and after that you may go into her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. But if you no longer delight in her, you shall let her go where she wants, but you shall not sell her for money, nor shall you treat her as a slave, since you have humiliated her. What do we do with this one, right? Here's my thesis. This is not a timeless ideal, but in its historical context, it was a protest against abuse.
I think there is something true that's being said there by Gavin, but I don't think it's those words. I don't think it was a protest. I mean, this is a lot of projection and a lot of speculation, but if the writer is talking about the ancestors of his audience, he doesn't want to insult them. So he could be introducing this rule not only as a way of distancing his culture that he doesn't want to implicate in doing something evil. So the writer themselves are idealizing the army, the Israeli army that's doing this slaughter. But he's also trying to say, oh, but your great-great-grandmother, who was a Canaanite, it wasn't violent. It was a consensual-ish. They didn't really have consent in that time period for one. But whatever the equivalent of, it's not the other thing, is what I think the author was trying to do. He was trying to say, look, here's the way out of that problem, and we're going to move past it. That could have been what was going on there.
All right, we'll get into the passage here momentarily, but I think it's important to one of the things I really like about Gavin and his stuff too is he's really organized. He's very clear. He articulates his points well, and in this case, there's these two things, right, that he really wants to communicate. The idea that this is not an ideal, that this is, I guess, working towards some.
I think there's another problem, which is the author is also writing this to compete against other narratives of the surrounding cultures, specifically the Babylonians, maybe the Hittites, the Egyptians, or if not the Babylonians, the Assyrians, whatever group is controlling Babylon at that time. So if you're writing in a later period and you're pushing back, but you want your narrative of your nation to be as grandiose as these other nations, you want to turn your tiny temple or tiny shrine into the biggest temple. And yeah, you're going to acknowledge some undeniable origins, the tent, but the tent will eventually become the temple. You want to do all of this. You're going to mirror or mimic the language that's in other conquest narratives. And that language is amoral at best and immoral at worst. So if you're mirroring that language, that's the language that you're introducing into your oral history, into your conquest history. Which again, in actuality, in real life, probably wasn't a conquest. It was just an evolution of cousins. But in the narrative, you're an outsider group coming in and conquering. So you're writing that version of your history, and you're importing this conquest language and propagandistic language from other cultures, and you're putting it right there in your text, and you're reading it as real history. I'm thinking of the Aeneid. I'm thinking about Livy. I'm thinking about Herodias. I'm thinking about the Styles and the narratives, the Odyssey, the Iliad, all of that.
It was a step in a more positive direction, I think,
Yeah.
is part of what he's getting at, right?
Yeah.
Compared to other practices.
The,
Blah, blah,
the incrementalism shuffle, basically.
okay, yeah,
That's
that's a nice way to
perfect.
put it.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
But
Yeah, and then no, I was just going to say then this idea that we should find something redeeming.
I'm not sure if this holds true to modern scholarship, but I know that in most of the introductions that I've read, the Iliad and the conquest narratives are supposed to be taking place at roughly the same time. Maybe 100 years difference, whatever. So you were talking about 1000 BC, 700 BC, 500 BC at the earliest. I always get mixed up how that's supposed to go. But let's say 500 BC. So you're 500 years before Christ. Maybe. Let's say you put the narrative at 1000 BC. Again, this is not when it's written. This is when it's supposed to be taking place. So it's supposed to be taking place at the same time, roughly, that either Mycenae fell or the Trojan War happened. So you have the same kind of this writing, this
Redeeming in this passage as well, right? He calls it a protest
against abuse.
I'm thinking about what happens to the leaders of the Amazons, the Amazonian women. I'm thinking about the girl who has the ability to see the future, but nobody will believe her. what happens with her and Achilles and her and Agamemnon. And what's Agamemnon's brother's name?
Right.
Against abuse.
I mean, I don't know. I'm like dying to jump in. So can I, or
Yeah.
I'm not sure with the protocol here. I'm like, okay, to say that this is about war rape is really is missing what you've just read. Like people, soldiers at the end of a battle raped the people that they had just conquered, male, female, or whatever. And so to say that this is about that practice or countering that practice is completely missing what this passage says. If at war you see someone you desire and you want her to be your woman, right? No husband and wife in Hebrew, but like you want her to be yours, this is how you handle it. When you are abusing someone, that is not about desire. Rape is not about desire. Rape is about it's about power. It's about abuse. It's about flexing. And so when this whole thing is about not about the context of rape. This is about how it's appropriate in their world to take a foreign woman as your property. This isn't about, right. It's like out of the gate. I'm like, he is pissing me off because he doesn't understand what rape is.
Well said.
And something that we've discussed several times already on this channel is the fact that rape is this world. The concept of rape, as we understand it, is not really amenable to this world because there.
And what Dan's saying here, I think, is completely correct.
Was there's not a word about consent.
Ever.
Never says ask her because
even when it's
because sex was not something that two mutual partners engaged in.
Exactly.
It was something that a sexual agent did to a sexual object.
Exactly.
And the agency, the will of the sexual object was just not relevant.
Exactly.
And so here it's just saying if you as a sexual agent want to take this sexual object, here's kind of this idealized standard operating procedure. Right. Which, as we have also discussed many times, doesn't necessarily mean anyone ever knew about this, much less enforce this. This is propaganda that was written in a period when they weren't really going out to battle. These are exiled folks.
I'm thinking about, for some reason, it's making me think about the writings in Japan about samurai. And if you think about Europe, the writings about knights, these are written after the fact. They're written after the Sengoku period. They're written after the chivalric period is reflecting a period that actually never happened, never existed. They're idealizing the knights in Europe, and they're giving them virtues and motivations that they wouldn't have had. The stories of the legends of the samurai, the folklore around them is beautiful, but if you go back and you read the details in Muramoto Musashi, you read the details inside their manuals of how to fight, it's not honorable. Like the idealized version, how to be a samurai, that's the idealized version. But you go back to what it was actually like to be a samurai during the Warring States period. It's brutal, and they're doing terrible things to people and terrible things to themselves. I kind of feel like what's happening here in the narrative, where it's like you're looking back, but your morality in whenever this was written versus the morality of someone in 2024 or 2025, 2020, 2030, your morality is completely different. Yeah, your brain hasn't evolved. Your body's still roughly the same, but your evolution of ethics has changed completely. Rights, the idea of rights is now a thing. It's just, and autonomy is now a thing.
Folks kind of fantasizing about when it's our turn again to do this. Here's how we are going to structure things, and look how progressive we're going to be. We're going to say when you let your enslaved person go, you've got to give them money. Like, yeah, that'd be a cool thing to do. Maybe one day somebody will do that. Let's write it down. And
right,
as Josh has pointed out, supernatural provisions, right? Like,
And I don't think this piece made it to the clips. I'm just going to throw this out there that he makes a comment about. Oh no, maybe he does. But sorry, I'm just getting ahead of you. But it's like when he says, well, they didn't, the Israelite soldiers didn't rape at the end of a battle. Like, you
Yeah.
have absolutely no basis to say that. It's like saying,
Well,
and he talks about what the biblical passages do say, and it's like saying that, forgive me,
well,
but
not,
I'm just going to be
not
really
all
honest.
of them.
That's like saying that Christian men today don't abuse their spouses because it says to treat them well in the scriptures. But we know, in fact, it's more, they're more likely because of all the oppression for everybody in these controlled relationships, that like that's a thing that happens a lot. So, you know, it's like a naivete too, that he means well. I do believe that, you know, but it just upsets me because he's saying such underinformed claims.
And I think one of the standard approaches of apologetics is to begin from the presupposition that this is all historical, authoritative, enforced, and none of that is supported by absolutely any data whatsoever. Like if you can't engage these texts as critical scholarship engages them, then the whole thing is a non-starter. If you demand that we accept that Deuteronomy is historical, was enforced, comes from the time period it claims to have come from, all of these things, before you can even engage the discussion, then you're not actually engaging the data, much less the debate. You're just kind of performing an argument for people who already agree with you and just want to be made to feel like there's a good case to make.
So I was already, the first time I listened to this, and I have watched part of this. I didn't finish the whole thing because I did get turned off by this the first time I tried to watch it. But I was already uncomfortable with how Jennifer was doing her analysis, I'm going to call it. But it was Dan's comments that really started to make me feel like they were disrespecting Gavin's academia. I know Trent Horn just spoke on this. He just spoke on this live on Inspiring Philosophy, where he feels that people don't believe that him and Gavin are real scholars, considering he has 3 masters and Gavin has a doctorate, and somehow they're not real scholars because they're apologists, but these people are real scholars because they are anti-religion or whatever Trent said. I don't think that's what's going on here, but I do feel offended by what Dan said there, and I do feel like that's apologetics. If you have a doctorate in apologetics, you still have a doctorate. If you have a doctorate in religion, you still have a doctorate in religion. You have a doctorate in philosophy of religion, you still have a doctorate. Like, I don't get this arrogance. I don't know. I don't know what to call it. To say that Trent or Jimmy Aiken is not a scholar seems wrong to me. You want to say I'm not a scholar, fine. You want to say that, reading, I don't know where I'm at in my reading list. Let's say 1,000 ancient texts in translated form doesn't count because they're translated. And reading 4 or 5 multiple copies of obscure books over and over again from the age of, when did I start that project? I'll say from the age of 21 to the age of 43 doesn't count because I don't know how to read Greek or Latin. Fine. Whatever. My last 30 years of my life doesn't matter. Doesn't count according to you. Whatever. But to say that Gavin Ortlund isn't a legitimate scholar, just, it insults me. It really does. It didn't feel right. And as this continues on, and they bang it out a few times. Kip actually started off with that in the beginning, because he was at Frueler. Somehow it doesn't count in the implication and the attitude. But the drumming of that as it gets louder throughout this turned me off from this episode, and I didn't finish the episode. But this was when I felt it the first time, and I felt it here again too. Just because you don't agree with their scholarship or their chosen field of study doesn't mean they're not scholars. Yeah. There's more I could say there because of my wife, but I'm not going to say it because my wife has a very nice position in what she does in her field, and I've been told not to talk about it. But from an insider's perspective, from a husband's perspective, of someone who's a scholar on this level in their chosen field, I sometimes out-argue my wife on economic issues, and out-argue my wife on issues related to her to where her doctorate is, and that doesn't mean that I studied for years and years and years, and that doesn't mean that doesn't make my opinion invalid. My opinion's not invalid because I don't have a degree behind my name or letters behind my name. So it does bother me. I'm not going to say it doesn't. It does bother me, and I think that was disrespectful to Gavin. Disagree with him all you want. I disagree with him as well, but I do feel there's a level of, oh, real scholars. You're not a real scholar. You're a religious scholar. You're an apologist. I do feel there's a little bit of that happening. Anyway, I said I was going to stop here. I'm going to go the 10 seconds or whatever, and then we will continue tomorrow.
Make for their agreement. That it's just performative at that point.
Yep.
Every day I'm.
Oh, dang it. Yeah, let's not mess it up this time. We're almost done. We're almost done.
Let's read the Bible the way Jesus did. In Matthew 19:8, note the emboldened words here.
That is just
and then this part right here really began to piss me off when they start shitting on Gavin for saying this and for doing this. This bothers me a lot. We'll get into that tomorrow. This will be a teaser for tomorrow's episode where I'll be defending Gavin a little bit more, because in this episode I almost didn't defend him at all because what he said was so stupid. But
performative at that point.
Yep.
Let's read the Bible the way Jesus did. In Matthew 19:8, note the emboldened words here.
I'm sorry. Oh boy.
Okay, so right there. That's where we'll start off tomorrow, so that way I can start arguing against what they're saying instead of just agreeing with them all the way through like a useful idiot. So, I love you all. This was a terrible episode for me. I don't like talking about these kind of things. Yes, those photos really are of me after all this stuff went down and happened to me. And yes, I really was miserable for many, many, many years. But that doesn't mean I'm suddenly an atheist when I'm 43 years old, or now going to be 44 in just a few days. I still have faith. I still believe in God, and I still believe the Bible is true. So take for that what you will. Tomorrow's episode will be more fun because they are more fun than Randall Rouser. Maybe that's another reason why Gavin didn't want to do it, because Kevin doesn't want to just be inundated and feel ashamed and guilt-ridden at the end of an engagement. That's projection. I don't know. I have no idea. That's pure speculation on my behalf. Anyway, if any of the big guys do watch this, take my opinion with a grain of salt. Just understand that I'm coming from someone who's experienced violence and trauma, and someone who is a Catholic, and someone who does believe in God, and someone who loves Gavin Ortlund and had his heart broken by Trent Horn and a few other apologists when their apologetics became more important than the truth. There you go. I love you all. I forgive you all. I forgive everyone for everything. If you think you're not forgiven, you are forgiven. I wish only the best for everyone. And may we find peace and understanding in this world. Love you all. Good night.
And when you feel like you're nothing, but you wanna be something, yeah. Well, all you really need is hope. I just want you to trust me if you wanna be something.
That's right. Let's go. Yeah, when you're feeling down and you're out, like you got nothing but doubt, you're alone in the crowd, just trying to figure it out. All of this cloud and this money got you feeling left out. Listen up to me now, every word that's out of my mouth. Wake up, it's me. You gonna follow your dreams, or are you just gonna be another cog in the scene? You feel the hope in this beat, yeah, the hope that you need to proceed and be exactly what you want it to be. I feel right and I'm proud, hype and I'm loud. I'm a